The following is a presentation of CBC Sports. The goal they have sought all season is at their fingertips. The final push that will put them over the top. In search of that perfect ride, that lightning trip that puts all their efforts into perspective. They ride a fine line of subtle differences, allowing a chosen few to become champions. Their vehicle for success may vary, the drive to be the best, personal or shared. But is it the marriage of man, machine, and ice which determines who is the fastest of all? The 1997 World Title battles in Bobsled and Luge are about to pass your way.
Hi there, I'm Tom Harrington. Now, I know Calgary is a long way from St. Moritz, Switzerland, but what better place to get in the mood for the 1997 World Bobsleigh Championships than at the site of the 1996 World Championships, Canada Olympic Park. And the Olympic track is a chilling reminder that the Nagano Games are less than a year away. Now, on today's show, we'll have highlights of the two-man and four-man competitions, as well as some highlights from the World Luge Championships. But first, we go with bobsleigh. And joining me is former national team member and Olympian Clark Flynn. Clark, let's look at the Canadian team. A lot of experience, especially in two-man competition. Assess our team for us.
Well, Pierre Luders is very strong. He's our #1 pilot in the two-man. He's got incredible starts, and the last two previous World Championships, he's gotten a silver medal, so we expect great things from him in this competition. Chris Laurie's been improving all season. His starts are getting better, and if he can put 4 solid runs together, we can find him in the top 10 as well.
The Europeans have always been dominant in this sport. Who should we look at to challenge the Canadians?
Well, I think out of the European market, we still have to look at U.S. slider Brian Scheimer. He's been consistent over the number of years, and this year he's putting the whole package together. Gunther Huber of Italy has gotten a great start this year with a change in brakeman, and if he can stay consistent again for 4 runs, he could find himself up there too.
In bobsleigh, each sled has 4 runs. We've had 2 so far, and here are the standings after those first 2 runs. Gunther Huber's Italian crew were quickest in run number 1, just a fraction ahead of the Swiss number 1. Canadian sleds, Luders and Laurie in striking distance. In run number 2, the Swiss were scorching, opening up a third of a second lead on the Italians, and suddenly both Canadian twosomes had a lot more work ahead of them. In 1897, the world's first bobsleigh club was established at St. Moritz, Switzerland. In the centennial year, the Bobs are back for the World Championships. You're looking at Gunther Huber and Antonio Tartaglia of Italy.
Well, Gunther spent a long time the last few years working on his dryland training, building up his strength and speed. Now with Antonio on the brakes, he's done much better at the start. Still about a 1/10 of a second behind the rest of the world, but his driving skill is incredible. Here you see him all the way into wall. They've got to be very tight in the sled. There's no moving. They don't have pressure on the runners, so any movement will put them from side to side.
Gunther Huber, the Olympic bronze medalist in the two-man in 1994 in Lillehammer.
He had a great Olympics in '94. Now he hopes with a little more work that he's done on his sleds and, of course, his physical skills being improved, that he should be a real threat in the future. Here they come into the big right-hander horseshoe. It's a big, long turn, but you can see there's not much steering involved. If he gets the line right coming in, just a little bit of touch in the lower runner, it'll come right around. Now in the lower series of the curves, they've got tree, bridge, leap, sacks. They just went through tree. Big dive down, a lot of pressure now and a lot of speed.
129-meter vertical drop from top to bottom. That's a long way down the hill.
It sure is, and a course that's almost 1.5 kilometers long. It's a long way to the bottom.
And you saw that speed, 137 kilometers an hour. They're really motoring. The Italian team of Huber and Tartaglia, a time of 3:13.83. That's for 3 runs. Of course, they get 1 more run at this course here in St. Moritz. Let's have a look at the Italian start.
Here you see Gunther drive off the blocks. He wants to get good, powerful strides in here at the beginning. You see Antonio on the brakes. He's starting to get his legs turning over faster and faster, and now they've got to accelerate. Watch Gunther get in. He gets his feet in and then settles quickly into a seat. His push bar comes down. Antonio's right in behind him and gets tucked down nice and low. Here we see them in horseshoe, a high line, and then it's going to come right around and dive out the exit.
Gunther Huber, Antonio Tartaglia of Italy. In Italy 1. Now, USA 1, Brian Scheimer, Robert Olesen.
It's all yours, man. It's all yours. Here we go.
Tension palpable at the start.
Come on, come on, come on, come on.
They've had pretty good starts all year long. Brian's been able to put his season together here. Usually we see him do good in the first couple of races and then injury overtakes him. That's a terrible mistake there. You got some movement by the brakeman that brings the sled switching around. It costs him in time and in speed. So important at the top here just to stay settled. If you don't like where you are, there's very little movement you can do to adjust yourself. You got to get the pressure, which you're going to get with speed and when you're in the curves. In the straightaway, you can't move at all. We're going to start to look for the time. You can see at 28 seconds. You start to watch the splits in comparison to the sleds that have gone down before him that have been faster. That gives you an indication of how he's doing relative to the field.
The time he's trying to match is that one on the left, a tenth behind.
They've got some great names for the curves here, you know, like we talk about telephone. That's where the original telephone was. They had one at the finish, one halfway up at telephone, and then one at the start. That way they could communicate on where the sleds were if there'd been an accident or something.
And you had an accident once in this course.
I managed to have an accident at the 82 Worlds in the four-man with Jim Carr pilot. He decided to take the quick exit out of Horseshoe, and it was the wrong one.
And the time, 3:13.90 for Brian Scheimer and Robert Olson in USA 1. That's their total time after 3 runs.
Now, Brian's a good, strong pilot. You can see he got caught with his step there. He almost jammed himself into the sled. It's so important for Robert to really explode off the sled, give Brian a chance to get going. And, of course, they had that mistake. Once they got loaded, there was still some adjustment they got in the sled. You can see the back end kick right, and that costs you, though.
Probably cost them at the bottom. Now from Canada, Pierre Luters, 26 years old from Edmonton, Alberta, and Dave McEachern, 29 from Charlottetown, PEI, east and west from Canada.
Now this crew is incredible. There's an unfortunate mistake they made in the second heat where Dave actually slipped and went down on his knee, and they had a 5:34 start, but we can expect 5:18. This is definitely in the World Cup circuit the best team there's ever been in regard to the start. And it's such an advantage on a course like this. If you get that great start, because the top is so flat, so slow, if he's already got the speed into his sled, he's just going to pick up time on the others.
And Luters is a name even casual bobsleigh fans know. He's a superstar already in the sport. 1994-95, he won the Triple Crown, I guess. He won the 2-man, 4-man, and the combined all in 1 year.
Yeah, he's been a superb pilot. You know, every year he gets better and better. Of course, his chemistry with Dave is so strong now, they just can expect they're going to be the fastest to start. As Pierre gets more and more comfortable and he gets the coaching from Hans Hildebrand, the head coach, becomes more relaxed and he's able to perform at these big events.
Checking the split time, just behind the fastest time so far, Luters and McEachern.
Watch their heads as they come out of the turn. You want to see them nice and low, and you don't want to see their heads going back and forth there. That shows they got a good line and a lot of pressure is centered.
135 kilometers an hour, and the time 104.64, a total time of 3:14.28 for Pierre Luters and Dave McEachern of Canada 1. You mentioned the heads going back and forth. That's how bobsleigh got its name, from heads bobbing back and forth.
Well, now you see the sleds are so tight, and the athletes are so big. You see the big quads on Pierre, and same with Dave McEachern. These are big boys that there's just no room to move around. But if they make a mistake on the exit or entrance of a curve, you'll see their heads snap back and forth.
And here are these world-class starts.
Look at just the power in the turning up. You can see the ice kicking up behind Dave's shoes, and same with Pierre's. And then look at the big thighs now. These are guys that are 6 foot plus, 100 kilos. Big boys to be jamming into that little sled.
You might see him on a football team, but not on a bobsleigh. Now, from Switzerland, their number 1 sled, Reto Gucci, 31 years old, and his brakeman, Guido Acklin. One of the top pilots in the world is Reto Gucci, 2-man silver medalist at the 94 Olympics.
Well, and Guido Acklin's a great brakeman. I almost say Donald Acklin, who was his brother, who was the brakeman for Gustav Vader in the 94 Olympics. A good pairing there, and Donald and Guido make a great combination when they're on a 4-man sled, although they're not doing that anymore. You can see Reto, he's so settled in the sled. Also, you can see the colors of the sled here. You know, Canada's colors reflect the Visa sponsorship that they had. I'm not even sure what Reto's represents. You know, kind of like a Dalmatian. Or
yeah, maybe it's Disney. It's 101 Dalmatians. I remember when they were red with just a little white cross on them.
Yeah.
It changed.
Either that or a very symmetrical Hershey cow or something. But look at the crowd in here and the cheers. You know, this is the hometown favorites for sure. They slide in the club not too far from here, and they've got a lot of support out here.
And the first split time as well for Gucci and Acklin of Switzerland.
You can hear the sled, just the running. That's just the runners bouncing up and down. Although they're fixed, there's still that movement of little pieces.
Entering the final series of turns. Bronze medalists at the last World Championships. And they have the best time thus far at 3:13.14. Reto Gucci, Guido Acklin of Switzerland. You know the crowd here in St. Moritz is going to love that.
Yeah, they sure are. You can see the snow flying out when they pull the brakes there. It's important to keep their eyes shut because one of those ice flies up and can kick back, and they'll get some of that in the eyes and find himself in the first aid place soon. Look at the focus he's got. You know, he's going to drive off there and hit that bar, and then hopefully at the same time Guido's gotten the sled moving off the blocks, and then they're going to get their turnover. See Rato's feet kind of turn out a bit, so that's not necessarily a great running position, but good turnover by Guido on the brakes.
And of course the shoes have spikes.
Yeah, actually there are about 100 little spikes, about thumbtack length and thumbtack sort of size, but they really rip up the ice.
Let's watch Chris Laurie and Sheridan Baptiste rip up the ice now for Canada. This is Canada 2. Chris Laurie, a veteran, one of the greats, almost a legend in Canadian bobsleigh. He put this country on the map, certainly in the 80s, in bobsleigh.
It was a great time when we brought Chris into the program just after the '84 Olympics. It was a real asset. He was the first full-time multidisciplined athlete coming from a decathlon background, and he has really brought the sport along, not only in his efforts to create sponsorship and awareness, but his community work as well. And with the acquisition of Sheridan Baptiste as brakeman, he's much improved on his start, although he still gives up about a 10th to 1500ths to the rest of the field. But his driving skill is so beyond what we see nowadays. You know, he's so technically good that the sacrifice he makes at the start, on a course like St. Moritz, he can almost make it up to the rest of the field. Look how tight Sheridan is. He's buried right behind, got a helmet just behind Chris's head, so the airflow comes over the top of the sled, over Chris's head, and right off Sheridan's back.
What does the brakeman see in a bobsleigh? The floor. That's about it.
Now down here you want nice clean lines. Chris doesn't want any banging on the side. You know, a little bit of banging when he's got that speed doesn't hurt as much, but banging up at the top will certainly hurt you.
Sheridan Baptiste, by the way, is a great track athlete. He trains with Glenroy Gilbert and hopes to make the 200-meter team for the World Championships in track and field. Laurie and Baptiste. Total time of 3:14.28. Well back, but not a bad run by Canada 2. Chris Laurie in his 13th season on the national team. And they find out the time of that run. They've completed 3. Here's a look at their start.
Now here, Chris is taking a different position than some of the other pilots. He doesn't back off the push bar. You can see him pushing on it, but you can see the push bar going up and down. Reaches across and gets in, but Sheridan's just got great turnover. Look at, he's taking about 5-6 steps more and then settles into the sled. You can see him get in down into his position.
The standings after 3 runs in the World Bobsleigh Championships. Gucci and Acklin of Switzerland in first place, followed by the Italians, then Scheimer and Olsen of the United States in third place. The Canadians back in 5th and 6th. When we come back, it's the final rundown. Our coverage of the World Bobsleigh Championships in St. Moritz will continue right after this.
About the time that gold was discovered on Bonanza Creek
that the Canadian Bank of Commerce set out on one of the great human adventures in Canada's history, the epic trek to the Klondike.
Is it terrible up there? I can't imagine.
They'd been asked to be the government's official bank.
In your letter, when you described the trip over the mountain,
Sure, there was plenty of gold, all right, and plenty of ways to spend it, too. But the men knew they could trust the Canadian Bank of Commerce.
As far as the new bank is concerned, I'm extremely well satisfied with the efforts.
You see, the bank was there on behalf of the Dominion government, and they could see beyond the glitter to a larger dream, a dream called Canada.
Your awaiting wife and
a loving and devoted husband, Wilfred.
When you never forget where you came from, you can see more clearly where you're going. As in the past, CIBC will continue to play a pioneering role by investing in Canada's vision of the
CIBC, how may I help you?
Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, seeing beyond.
Comics. Let me just throw the timing out at you and see if this was a bad situation for a man to have an argument with a woman. Full moon, I'm not going to say who, but one of us had a PMS situation happening 2 days after she quit smoking. I wish I could tell you I won.
Comics, Monday night at 8:30 on CBC Television, 9 in Newfoundland.
They will grab a seat anywhere in Moritz, Switzerland, as we continue our coverage of the World Bobsleigh Championships from this beautiful Swiss ski resort. Chris Laurie, Sheridan Baptiste in Canada 2, the fourth and final of their runs here at this competition. And the Canadians need a big start.
Well, we definitely need to see him in the 520s low, hopefully. 528. You just know that Pierre, who's tied with him, is going to have a great start. So Chris has got to get himself the advantage up here. You can see how settled he is. His eyes just over the top of the cowling, airflow moving over, no movement. Now as he gets into wall, he really wants to cut it off so that he's shortening the distance. It's so flat at the top, he doesn't want to overdrive, but he certainly wants to leave himself a good area. He also wants to see himself going straight down the middle of the straightaways. He doesn't want to get into the curves late. He wants to get in early and just let it run around.
Just 3/100ths behind.
These are nice, smooth transitions. You see just a little bit of head movement. Again, Sheridan tucked right down there, and now they're really starting to pick up speed and cover some territory.
A good split time now for Laurie and Baptiste. This team's been together now for 4 years. 136 kilometers an hour. And the time, 104.81, a good time for Chris Laurie and Sheridan Baptiste of Canada, a total time of 4:19.09 for this Canadian twosome. Sheridan, a great all-around athlete as well, played football and did track at Queen's University. You see a lot more of these kinds of versatile athletes in bobsleigh.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we could find ourselves 3 or 4 more Sheridans, we'd be laughing. He's a good-sized athlete, running up just over 90 kilos, but great speed and a great attitude. He is definitely a team player. Just look at the turnover he gets. He's got good high leg lift and the ice that's ripping up underneath. It's so important to be pushing that sled. Good balance. His head's not wobbling around. He's just so solid.
Good look at Chris Laurie, born in Windsor, Ontario, now lives in Vancouver. Sheridan Baptiste, born in Guyana, now lives in Ottawa, Ontario. Canada 1, Pierre Lueders and Dave McEachern. They were in contention. Can they fight for a medal?
Now, in relationship to Chris's to Pierre's sled, you can see Pierre is almost 30 pounds heavier than Chris, and McEachern about 20 pounds heavier than Pierre, so they don't have that weight in the sled. They got it in muscle mass, and they have relatively the same speed. So when you put that sled, you know, that body into muscle, then you're laughing.
Good start time once again for McEachern and Lueders.
Well, Pierre has definitely shown some fighting spirit here after having that disastrous second run. He really came back and drove well. And now, you know, the third run wasn't so hot, but if he can put a good run together here, he's going to show himself well, launching into the 4-man, which is upcoming. Yeah, it's a good indicator when you start to see negative splits that he's really cutting up the time relative to Chris, who had the fastest run to this point.
This crew won the silver medal at the last World Championship, so we know what they're capable of.
Yeah, I'm sure Pierre's not comfortable not being in the medal hunt right now, but, you know, he just had a couple of mistaken runs there, so he's working hard to get back into the field.
Another good split time. Third of a second ahead of the fastest run up to this point.
Boy, we'll look for a good speed here, you know. A little mistake there, just a touch of wobble.
135. Get out your speed guns. The time, 104.45. A very, very fine run by Pierre Lueders and Dave McEachern as Mr. McEachern hits the brakes. Third of a second faster than the previous fast sled down this course at Moritz, Switzerland. The total time, 4:18.73, which puts them in third place currently, but of course some of the top sleds in the earlier rounds still to come. It's a sport of fractions of seconds.
Here you can see, look at the back on these guys. I mean, they're just big and powerful. That's the one way to describe them. In fact, Dave just lifted the back end of the sled right out of it. You can see it rocking up and down. There's just so much power from the front, too, with Pierre's turnover. It's important. You know, they got to be big and fast, though. That's the key in this sport now.
I don't know if there's a fire, but these guys are on fire. It's been hot. Scheimer and Olsen now the United States, their fourth and final run. It's almost like the sound you hear before weightlifters lift the big weights. They really expend so much energy.
Yeah, that initial hit certainly helps. Well, you can see again the indicator shows that Pierre and Dave definitely have the faster start. But let's look at their sled a bit. This is a bit of a different design. This is the Jeff Bodine, who's famous from the car racing. His team has come together and helped the Americans in their design of the aerodynamics of the sled. They've done a lot of computer work on the stress and the airflow, and this is the sled they feel is going to put them at the top of the field. It's a different sound than you hear relative to the other sleds. Our sleds are made not only by Hans Hildebrand, the head coach, but also by Siorpaz, an Italian sled builder, and as well the former East German program Dresden is building sleds. So there's a lot of different styles up there, but this one is definitely unique.
When there's so little between sleds, that little edge technologically must be a huge one sometimes.
Sure. You know, you only got to win by 100 in this sport, so every little bit helps.
Here comes the United States first sled. Brian Scheimer, Robert Olsen, 135 kilometers an hour as they cross the finish line. 104.77 is their time for their fourth and final run. Total time, 418.67. That moves them into second place. An impressive run by this American sled. They look satisfied.
Wow, it was a great run by Brian. He definitely put the 4 runs together. Every year we've seen him previous, he's had a couple of good runs and then things have fallen apart, but good work for him. Here we see the turnover. Look at the cadence that's being set up and the stride length. Brian's head's moving a little bit side to side, but a good clean entry into the sled. And unlike Sheridan, Robert doesn't have that leg turnover, so he loads right in after Brian.
Huber, Tartaglia, they are pumped for their fourth and final run, taking a shot at a world championship in Moritz, Switzerland. Incredible intensity.
Very, very focused. Not only you have to push this sled out, everybody's cheering and yelling, but then you got to get right in, and then focus and settle and get ready for the upcoming curves.
Takes him a lot of build-up speed on that flat area.
Sure does. Almost a third of the course comes in the first 30 seconds, all the way into here. We're seeing them negotiate into Sunny. But it's taken them all that time to get there. Now they start to really handle the course. There's the curves of Nash and Dixon, then into Horseshoe. Now they're really starting to pick up speed. A lot of G-force here, about 4 Gs as they come out of there.
Huber 6th at the World Championships in Calgary last year. How's he looking so far?
Well, a little bit of a bump there, but boy, nice smooth transitions.
Across the finish line, 104.74. Günter Huber with a total of 418.57, and that put him in first place. A 1/10 of a second faster than the previous best time. The Italians looking very, very strong on Moritz. High fives all around.
It's great for the Italian program. He definitely has the driving skill now with a little bit improved start. Moritz is a forgiving course in some areas. He definitely worked well on this course for him.
But now, the cheer goes up for Gucci and Acklin of Switzerland. The #1 sled, here they go. Enormous cheer goes up.
Good start, very competitive, very close to Pierre's with only 100th off. So this is definitely working well for them, this combination of Acklin and Gucci. And Gucci falls through a long line of good pilots. In fact, the runners that he's using here belong to a former Swiss pilot, Ralph Piekler, who slid through the 80s, and he married the Canadian physio in that time frame. He now lives in Toronto, but when he left the Swiss program to go coach the Italians, he sold his runners not only to Huber, he sold a second set to Reto Gucci, and these are the runners that they're still using today.
From generation to generation.
Yeah, and a lot of pressure on this course. I mean, they've had Eric Scherer come through here and win medals. Our coach, Hans Hildebrand, former Swiss world champion. And there's been a lot of great Swiss pilots.
Well, the Swiss have won more medals in the Olympics, World and European Championships, and a World Cup than any other nation. The final turn now. Gucci and Ackland, 104.45. And a total of 417.59, and that is enough to make them the world champions. And the people at St. Moritz couldn't be happier than to see one of their own win it right here at home.
Yeah, and to do it by almost a full second is just an incredible time difference over some other great pilots.
Hugs all around. A world championship for the Swiss. The crew will now be weighed along with their sled, but I have a feeling that they're walking on air. What better way to celebrate a centennial than with gold? Tip your cap to the Swiss. The final standings: Gucci and Ackland of Switzerland, the gold medal. Hubert Tartaglia of Italy, the silver. Scheimer and Olsen of the United States win the bronze. The Canadians in 4th and 6th. And for Chris Laurie and Sheridan Baptiste, it's all about teamwork.
Well, Chris and I, we've been together for quite a while. I think it's been about 5 years. And it's really important that he has the confidence in the person that's behind him. Because if he has any doubts that our starts aren't going to be close, or maybe I'll slip getting into the sled or anything like that, you know, it kind of throws him off. And you really want to take as much off of his mind. All he has to do is worry about driving. And, you know, the guy behind him, you know he's going to do his job.
We're pretty happy with the performance at the Worlds here. You know, we had some real health problems the first half of the season, and we did a quick fix, and we worked hard to come back off of that because we didn't have that great of results first half. And so we're happy with the 6th here, although, you know, I think we could have been in the medals if we were top form, but it was a hard fight, and these guys are good competitors.
We know that we are capable of winning a medal. We know that we're capable of doing really well in Nagano. So I think this is more or less an indicator of how we can do, and it just makes us more hungry. It makes us realize that, you know, it was nice finishing top 6, but we know we can do a lot better than top 6. Hopefully we'll go out in the summertime, get a little bigger, and really concentrate on what we have to do.
All right, sit back and relax, or maybe not. The World Luge Championships are coming up.
The Nissan Pathfinder. Go wherever your imagination takes you.
We're rolling. Hi, I'm Albert Schultz. I'm going to be hosting the 1997 Gemini Awards. This year, we've decided to take a bare bones, sort of no frills approach to the award. Actually, can we get just a hint more light here? Well, it's a bit harsh. Maybe some powder would be good. Just quickly now. Okay, maybe just a jacket or something. There we go. Well, forgot the shirt and tie.
The Gemini Awards, Sunday, brought to you by Chrysler Canada.
So no frills, Geminis, with all the comforts of home.
Moritz key tags are a symbol of our work for child amputees. Through the CHAMP program, children receive the artificial limbs they need to lead active lives. As they grow up, the War Amps will be there, providing information, guidance, and so much more. The War Amps. Amputees helping amputees. Thanks to your support of the key tag service, lost key return now by courier.
With its sophisticated real-time four-wheel drive, an interior you could quite happily live in, an agile double wishbone suspension. The real news is, where won't you be seeing the new Honda CR-V this year?
The race begins. The international high-speed track across North America and beyond. Molson Canadian Race Night on CBC has the Miami Grand Prix tomorrow late night.
This is Austria, and the hills will soon be alive with the sound of luging. Welcome back to our coverage of the World Bobsleigh and Luge Championships. We are at Canada Olympic Park in Calgary, where back in 1988, the top lugers in the world flew down the course at the Winter Games. Well, today, we're going to another Olympic venue at Igls, Austria near Innsbruck for the World Luge Championships. And joining me is former national team member Marilyn Vestergaard. And Marilyn, in men's singles, this has been a two-man grudge match for a very long time.
Absolutely. Look at the setup. 1992 in Albertville, Georg Hackl of Germany first, Markus Prock of Austria second. 1994 Lillehammer. Georg Hackl of Germany first, Markus Prock second. So the World Championships, I don't see anything different than that. And for Nagano, I definitely think that this World Championships in Igls is that setup race.
Let's look at the rest of the competition. Can any man knock off one of these two men?
Well, I think the Germans team are extremely strong. You got to look at Jens Müller moving up into the pack. And you can't forget the Americans, Wendell Suko. He's done extremely well on the World Cup circuit. The World Championships will be an area for him to prove. And Nagano is something else as far as results are concerned.
One thing we know for sure, the crowd in Austria will be on Markus Prock's side. Let's head over to Innsbruck now for the competition in men's singles. One of the two great rivals we spoke of, Georg Hackl of Germany, two-time Olympic gold medalist in 92 and 94.
Let's take a look at his start. Very strong push-off, strong paddles, four big ones coming down that ramp, and that first curve. Nice smooth transition going to that first curve. Again, aerodynamics is the key to this sport. You see it in the design of the sled, the suit, the helmets, the visors.
In case you're new to the sport, they are steering these sleds essentially with their feet and their upper body.
That's correct. It's shoulder steering, head steering. It's very slight. You can't really see it while you're watching the runners coming down the sled, but they are steering ever so slightly. And again, they flatten out in the curve, and in the straightaway, you want the head right back to catch that aerodynamic flow.
He's moving. Georg Hackl of Germany. Across the finish line, a time of 49.041, the top time so far in this first run. Georg Hackl shaking his head.
Let's look at the transition coming out of the curve. Again, the body is very loose on the sled, and that's what you want to see. He's very relaxed.
Georg Hackl of Germany, and now his great rival, Markus Prock of Austria, 32 years old, and he lives very close to this track in Igls.
Again, here's a good setup for the start. Strong sling back out of the start handles, but it had a bit of a problem coming down the ramp. You can see how the sled shifted a bit to the right and to the left. That will cost him time.
The start, as in bobsleigh, very, very important in luge as well.
And see if you can catch the shoulder rolling. That is part of the steering that the luger does on his sled to maneuver himself in and out of the curves. A couple other things to look for is the head back. Any looping in the curves, looping meaning the sled going up and down the curves.
I'm sure Markus Prock can hear this Austrian crowd.
Again, a series of S curves, setting up close to that finish line, flattening out his body.
Here he comes, Markus Prock of Austria, a time that's better than Georg Hackl's 48.984. And that brings a big cheer from the partisan crowd here at Igls.
And once again, the looseness on the sled. Look how flat his body is, how he puts his head way back, arms tucked in. Nice positioning.
On that shot, you almost see the dimpling on those new suits. The aerodynamic position of Markus Prock of Austria.
Again, look at the transition out of the curve. Very smooth. Into the straightaway. His feet does touch down slightly.
Our next competitor from Canada, this is Clay Ives. He's 24 years old from Bancroft, Ontario. Great story about Clay. There's a fountain in his town, and people can throw money in the fountain, and those are donations to help Clay compete on World Cup.
Again, Clay, we saw him in 1994 in Lillehammer, though he was doing doubles. He did compete in singles as well and finished 20th. This is the first time he's going full out doing singles in the World Cup circuit. Again, you can really notice the speed difference between a Clay Ives and a Markus Prock or a Georg Hackl. And again, the positioning. Notice how the head is tucking up. Difficult problems coming into that curve, head up, and you see as soon as your shoulders bring up, you start steering the sled and you have no longer the control that you require to get in and out of the curves.
If you don't have control, you've got nothing. Clay Ives of Canada, a time of 49.797, well back of the leaders. And he knows it. Our next competitor, Tyler Seitz of Canada. He's 20 years old, from Calgary, Alberta, coming off a fine junior career. Last year, he was on the podium, a bronze medal at the World Junior Championships.
And Tom, this is the first year on the senior circuit, and look at him, 4 paddles down that starting ramp, a good example of the grassroots programs that he comes from in Calgary. Again, he's taking this particular experience, not only the World Championships, but the whole World Cup circuit as experience. You can certainly notice the speed difference between a Tyler Seitz and a Georg Hackl or a Marcus Prock. And he still has an awful lot to learn about positioning. But for Tyler, it's getting to know the track, getting used to the competition. But really, he's not doing too bad of a job coming out of that curve, but you can see the shoulders are up, losing the aerodynamic form, and losing costly time.
His feet touch the track as well. It slows him down, I imagine.
Absolutely. You want to keep the feet off the ice, shoulders tucked in.
That run, not ideal for Tyler Seitz, but a learning experience indeed. He looks a little disappointed. A time of 50.143. Good look at what a luge looks like.
Again, look at the transition coming out of the curve, and he whams right into that wall. Now he's trying to steady himself with his feet, keeping control of the sled.
One souvenir of the World Championships, a bruise. Another Canadian competitor, this is Walter Corey, 25 years old, from Calgary, Alberta. He missed half of last season fighting his way through lymphoma, which of course is a form of cancer. A courageous effort to get back at these World Championships.
Again, poor setup for that first curve and down that starting ramp. But again, a nice flat positioning on his sled. You can see how he's put his head back. And again, the steering takes place from shoulder rolling, using the feet up against the runners. The runners are what comes up in between the legs of the slider. And again, you can see how that head tilted up. And that will cost him time.
Must be hard to resist the temptation to look ahead of you.
It is. You can certainly see that from the junior, the inexperienced riders. Hit that wall pretty hard. But a good comeback.
Entering the final turn now, this is Walter Corey of Canada. Crossing the finish line, 50.524, well back. The Canadian team has competed in 2 of the 4 World Cups up to the World Championships. Walter's best result, a 31st at Koenigsee.
Look how he's going to slam right up against the wall, brush up against that left-hand wall, but he's going to try to steady himself because he wants to stay on that sled, set up for that first curve.
A look at the standings after the first run. The Europeans dominating, led by the dynamic duo, Prock of Austria first, Hackl of Germany second. Wendell Suko back in 6th place of the U.S. For the Canadians, tough sledding. The top Canadian in 21st place, Clay Ives. 1 run down and 1 to go. Don't run away. We'll return to Igls and the World Luge Championships right after this.
Some long-distance companies promise you savings of anywhere from 25 to 50% off Bell's regular rates. Some promise they'll guarantee your savings. And some will even promise free calling just to get you to sign up. All of which raises a question. If all these long-distance promises are so great, then why are more than 5,000 people a week switching back to Bell? Just asking. Welcome to the new Bell.
It's no surprise that Canada exports so much when you consider how much Canadians have to offer the world. That's why since 1990, Ford of Canada has invested some $4 billion in this country and its future so that we can build vehicles right here, not only for the roads of Canada, but also for the roads of the world as well. Ford and Canada, same road, right direction.
The pain was
unbelievable.
A questionable mastectomy.
They know that a serious mistake was made and they just left her.
Then reconstruction almost killed her.
I fight it with my last breath.
The Fifth Estate, Tuesday at 8.
It's not always very clear to the purchaser just what it is they're buying.
Original prints, signed reproductions. There is a difference.
Everybody knows when they get a reproduction print, they're getting a reproduction print.
Marketplace, Tuesday at 7:30.
The TV's doing a film about Ben Wick's life.
I've always tried to, whatever I've done in life, give people what they want.
Ben Wicks? The cartoonist?
Yes, that's right. On Life and Times, Wednesday at 8.
What's he ever done?
Shockwaves. Eaton stalls off bankruptcy, and hundreds of companies around it are pulled into the turmoil.
We're now sitting on the edge of our seat, wondering whether or not we're going to have a customer tomorrow.
Sunday night on Venture, right after Sunday Report.
The Austrian Alps, a spectacular setting near Innsbruck, Austria, and the Olympic track where Luge debuted back in 1964 at the Olympic Games. And there is a look at Mrs. Marcus Prock and a new addition to the Prock clan, who live nearby this track. This is run number 2 with the men's singles, and this is Jens Müller of Germany, 31 years old, gold medal in Calgary, 1988.
An interesting story about Jens Müller. At the first World Cup race, some kids put a ladder in the track. Jens Müller goes down, and let me tell you, he certainly stopped in the track at that point and really set him off for the next couple of races.
A little spooked by that.
And Jens Müller is really the product here of a strong German team, not only in the men's division, but certainly in the women's as well. There's tremendous depth. Look at the aerodynamic position again. Both the German teams have done extremely well here as a flat aerodynamic movement between the curves, picking up the speed. Again, it's a series of S-curves that he's going to be going into, so you want a smooth transition between the S-curves, flat line, low in the curve.
Entering the final turn, Jens Müller of Germany. He comes from a town called Ilmenau, which is the luge capital of Germany. It's produced 9 Olympic medalists, including his 1988 gold medal. Total time, 1:38.672 for both runs.
Look at the shoulder rolling as he comes out of that curve.
Slow and steady, or fast and steady in this case. This is Gerhard Gleicher of Austria, 27 years old, and he lives near Innsbruck, and he's a member of the Igls Luge Club, so he knows this track very, very well.
We should point out, at the World Championship, it's the lowest aggregate total time after 2 runs. At the Olympic Games, it's after 4 runs.
Less room for error with only 2 runs.
Consistency is the name of the game. And when you look at an athlete, someone like a Georg Hackl and a Marcus Prock, it is amazing to see how their sled goes down the exact line time and time again.
Well, Gleicher learned at the knee of the great Marcus Prock.
But look how flat he is. He is completely flat out on his sled, head back, feet pointed forward, good positioning. And that crowd is behind him. These sliders actually feel the course. It's not necessary for them to look at the curve. They know instinctively exactly where the curve begins and ends, so they're looking skyward.
Gerhard Gleicher of Austria, and that's a run Marcus Prock would have been proud of. 1:38.591, a total time. Fist wave to the crowd, and they love that run.
Again, look at the head positioning. He is looking upward. He's not looking towards his feet, keeping a flat body positioning.
And ever so slightly shifting his weight. A big smile by Gerhard Gleicher of Austria, with friends and family watching. Now the great Georg Hackl. This is run number 2 for the great German star. His best result prior to World Championships, only a 5th at Altenburg.
And what a tremendous result for Georg Hackl. In October, he had a bit of problem when he was doing some weight training. Pulled his back. He had to get some surgery done 6 weeks before the World Cup circuit actually started, and he's back here and winning races. When you look at form, you look at execution of driving skills, Georg Hackl really is perfection. He's blinded as he's going down the course, looking straight up into the sky. He knows where the curves are. He does feel it. He feels it with his sled, his body, and the movement of the ice as he's going down the curves. And he is actually picking up speed as he's going down the course. It is really amazing to watch Georg Hackl maneuver his sled through this course.
If you like watching the best, you're watching the best. Georg Hackl of Germany, 138.277. That is a first place time for the great German competitor. He makes it look so easy.
We talk about the steering, and it really takes on two components. There's the leg and the shoulder steering. The leg steering, pressure exerted inward and downward, and then you have the shoulder steering that allows him very slightly to set up for the next curve, but he's flat on his sled, keeping the aerodynamic position.
Now, his rival, Markus Prock of Austria, has come in with 3 of the 4 World Cups in his pocket, gold medals in each of those, and a silver in the other one. He's been on a roll. Can he knock off his great German rival?
The rivalry is unbelievable. Again, strong paddles, but not as smooth as getting into the sled. You can see the movement ever so slightly, setting up for the first curve. Now, the sleds, we should point out, in singles, both for men and women, are 23 kilos in weight, so approximately 50 pounds. But you can see the design of the sled has come a long way. The arms are tucked inside, again, capitalizing on the aerodynamic and streamlined positioning.
Listen to the crowd cheering on Markus Prock.
But Markus Prock, always the bridesmaid.
And here he comes. Markus Prock of Austria, 138.513, and no, that is not enough to knock off Georg Hackl of Germany. And Prock knew it.
Once again, here's a steering motion that is happening with his inward and downward positioning of his feet on those inside runners that are coming up in between his legs.
And a consoling hug from his wife after yet another very, very close loss. Georg Hackl of Germany beats Markus Prock once again. The 2-time Olympic gold medalist takes the World Championship. Prock is second. Gerhard Gleicher, another Austrian, takes the bronze. For the Canadians, Clay Ives, the top Canadian, in 20th place. Seitz is 22nd. Walter Corey in 39th place. We're done with the men, but the women are coming up next. We continue our coverage from the World Luge Championships right after this. Stay with us.
Based on a true story.
South Africa plays with your head. You never know who your friends really are.
An expatriate recalls his past.
Could you ever fall in love with a Negro boy?
We have to tell someone.
You're having nightmares again.
You think I'm nuts?
A racist is someone who doesn't like other people.
Why are they allowed to drive cars at all?
This doesn't mean that what happened in South Africa didn't affect you.
I'm over that.
Sure you are.
Ekaya, Thursday on CBC.
I can't go to the photocopier without being molested.
Come on, let me rock you.
I'm just a piece of meat.
Loosen up, friend. Give me a hug.
This hour is 22 minutes, Monday on CBC.
The people want a good show.
Committed.
I've done this job 3 of the last 4 years.
Experienced.
It's a role I take very, very seriously.
The Gemini Awards, Sunday on CBC.
Frankly, I think I do a pretty good job.
Delusional.
Let's go! We've got more ice time than you can shake a stick at. Game 1, the Sharks invade Toronto to battle the Leafs. Then the Habs take on the Oilers. Doubleheader Saturday on Molson Hockey Night in Canada on CBC.
The Austrians love their luge. Welcome back to our coverage of the World Luge Championship from Igls near Innsbruck, Austria. The women's singles, the first run for Susie Erdmann of Germany. 28 years old, and she lives in Oberhof, which hosts a World Cup event, so she gets lots of practice at home.
The women must maneuver their sleds over 10 curves about 1,000 meters in length. For the men, it was 14 curves, 1,250 meters in length.
So their times will be a little shorter.
And the speed isn't quite the same as the men, but nonetheless just as difficult. A little bit slower off the top, but they will start picking up speed at about 2/3 of the course. The women's sled is about 23 kilos, the same as the men, about approximately 50 pounds. Again, once the aerodynamic position is very important again. The head must be back, and you can see the big difference between the Germans and the Austrians versus the Canadians as far as holding the head position down.
39.945 for Susie Erdmann of Germany, the silver medalist at the last World Championships in 1996.
Again, look at the setup as she comes out of the curve, flattening out, her shoulders back, her feet getting ready for that first setup curve.
Constant adjustment. Susie Erdmann, a product of what was the East German sports machine, now with, of course, a unified German team. Our next competitor from Canada. This is Deb Bergeson, the 4-time defending Canadian champion.
Let's look at the difference between the start for Deb Bergeson. Again, a bit of problem setting up into the curve. Again, the first is a left-hand curve. Her feet coming down. Again, the sled is moving back and forth, causing costly time.
And not nearly the same speed we saw from Erdmann.
And for the women, for the Canadian team, you know, they did not have Canadians in the Lillehammer. The last time the Canadians were there was really in 1992 in Albertville. The best finish there was Kathy Salmon, 16th place. So for the Canadian team and women's, they really have their work cut out for them. Again, you can really notice the difference in positioning for the Canadians versus everyone else.
And the time reflects that. 41.443 for Deb Bergeson of Calgary. She is well back, and she can't hide that, the look on her face.
Again, look at her feet position. They're going to drop off the sled, bang into that straightaway, and then she's got to stick her foot up to straighten herself back up to regain the positioning.
Did a good job just to stay upright that time. Another Canadian, this is Jody Hayes. She is 29 years old. She was born in Edmonton, now lives in Calgary and trains there. Her 5th year on the national team.
Again, the first curve is a left-hand curve. She straightens herself up, but does not have the positioning like the top 5 competitors in this particular event. The Canadians are really, as far as the women are concerned, are really well back in the pack.
Jody needs at least top 13 performance to qualify for the Olympic Games in Nagano. That's a terrific view.
How the runners themselves, it's just the inside part of the steels that are touching the ice. It is not flat on the ice, just the inside portion of the steels. And the kuffins come up in between the legs of the slider, and that's what they use as far as the feet steering is concerned for the sled. And then you got the shoulder steering as well.
Across the line, a time of 40.760. 22nd place for Jody Hayes of Canada. They'll get one more run at this course here in Igls near Innsbruck, Austria.
Again, not quite the same positioning. Her feet are wobbling back and forth, and you can see how the head tucks up again, losing that precious time. Bangs up against the wall. She's got to straighten herself out.
Those little fractions that cost so much in a sport that once again is measured in 1/1000th of a second. Now, from Germany, this is Silke Otto. No big results on the World Cup this season, but another sign of the German depth. She has Olympic and World Championship experience. The Germans just trot out all these losers.
It's unbelievable the depth of the German team. Not only the A team, but the B team is just as strong, and giving the A team members really something to fight for as far as positioning is concerned. Again, you can notice the difference between the top sliders in this particular program of the World Championships compared to those lower down into the field. They instinctively know how the curves are coming up, the transition between them. And again, we have to impress the fact the aerodynamic position of these athletes is superb.
And crossing the line is Silke Otto of Germany, a time of 39.969, and she's in contention.
Let's see how she comes out of that curve, keeping her feet still, setting up for that first curve.
Well, there's either a traditional Austrian hat or a guy who didn't look in the mirror before he left the house. All right, the standings after run number 1, Susie Erdmann of Germany first, Silke Otto of Germany second, the Europeans dominating Canadians well back. Well, we hope you're enjoying the ride. Much more to come. Run number 2 for the women's singles luge right after this.
It'd be so good to see you smile, the smile you wear. Just shoot the breeze as if we never had a care. It'd be so great to hear your laughter coming through. Yeah, that's it, you know it's the least I can do. Yeah, it'd be so good.
I'm sure a lot of folks can tell you the same story. You just don't forget a thing like that. I can still tell you the page number in that Canadian Tire catalog. That bike went everywhere with me. But I knew Dad had more important things to think about. I slept, ate, lived, and breathed that bike. But I just couldn't ask him for it.
Hey, boy, I got a couple new tires you can help me unload.
Boy, what I'd give to have seen my face that day.
Warham's key tags are a symbol of our work for child amputees. Through the CHAMP program, children receive the artificial limbs they need to lead active lives. As they grow up, the War Amps will be there, providing information, guidance, and so much more. The War Amps. Amputees helping amputees. Thanks to your support of the key tag service, lost key return, now by courier.
A little known fact as we return to the World Luge Championships that luge was around before bobsleigh, created in 1883. This is run number 2 now for Jana Bode of Germany, 27 years old. She was actually born in East Germany, now makes her home in Winterberg.
Again, for the women's, it's the lowest aggregate total time after 2 runs at the World Championships, and at the Olympics, it's after 4. You might want to know, Tom, at the start, they actually have 30 seconds to release themselves from the start handle.
Build up that speed for that important start.
And sometimes you'll see some of these sliders hold their feet up to the very last second so they can click off the timing lights to give them that reassurance of speed and time.
Jana Bode, the defending world champion.
Again, nice smooth transitions. She's very quiet on that sled.
119.976, her total time for 2 runs. Jana Bode, who fled East Germany just before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and some interesting rivalries, let's say, between her and Susie Erdmann.
But it's a friendly rivalry nonetheless. Again, competitors do share the experience they have from one course to another.
Interesting that she is not looking down, just looking up to the sky and feeling her way down the track. Jana Bode of Germany. Now, our next competitor, Angelika Neuner of Austria. Innsbruck is her home. These are familiar surroundings for her, and she and her sister Doris very successful in luging throughout their careers.
Let's take a look at the start. Good execution off to the start handles, down that ramp, set up the first curve, which is a left-hand curve. Notice the shifting in the body weight between the shoulder and leg steering. You have to remember, off the top, they don't have that much speed, so it even becomes more critical from that start. But notice how compact she is. You don't even seem to notice her on the sled itself. There's that oneness that she's created on top of her sled. And you're right, Tom, she does feel the course. The sleds are very sensitive, and she can feel every bump and groove on that course.
And this is where she learned to slide under the tutelage of Marcus Prock. Here she comes, Angelika Neuner of Austria, a time of 1:19.988, and that puts her into contention as well. She was third after the first run.
Look at that, her head is completely back, looking straight skyward, feeling the course.
A silver medalist at the Albertville Olympic Games to her sister, Doris. Our next competitor from Germany, the second run for Silke Otto.
Remember, there are four forces which can really affect the slider's speed. There's air resistance, friction, weight, and certainly driving ability. And for Silke Otto, she's probably one of the best drivers of this particular course.
And the driving is very, very subtle to the human eye, seeing it for the first time.
Exactly. You don't even really notice that they're steering, either foot steering or shoulder steering. It is very slight. You have to remember that these sleds are extremely sensitive, that even breathing can set the course direction of the sled. Sometimes they breathe out into a curve, flatten the body, increasing the speed, nonetheless going into the curve as well.
Around the final turn, here comes Silke Otto of Germany, a time of 1:20.022. And a nice round of applause for the appreciative crowd at Igls, where they know their luge. And the partisan Austrian crowd now enjoying it.
It may sound repetitive, but look at the oneness that she creates on that sled. She is part of it, feeling the course as she's going down, flatten out that aerodynamic position.
Another example of the spectacular German program, Silky Smooth, Silke Otto of Germany. Now, another German product, Susie Erdmann, silver at the World Championships.
Again, 30 seconds to release yourself from the start handles. Good, strong 3 paddles down that start ramp and set up for that first left-hand curve. But she's going blind as she's going down the course. Again, the head does not tuck up. It's flat out, arms tucked in, shoulders back, allowing the shoulders to roll as she's going in and out of the curve. Most of the time for the women, it is strictly shoulder steering that allows them to maneuver down this course.
You see those sheets hanging down this to protect this course from melting under the bright sunlight.
Women's sled about 23 kilos or about 50 pounds, the same as the men's singles event.
And Susie Erdmann of Germany, a time of 1:19.931, and that is good enough to give her the world title. And even the Austrian crowd could appreciate the outstanding quality of this German team. And a great hug for Susie Erdmann of Germany, the world champion.
Again, great form for Susie. Nice aerodynamic position, and that's what it's all about.
The best of an outstanding German team, and the standings can tell you that. Erdmann first, Bode second, 1-2 for Germany. They are also 4th and 6th. A powerful performance. For the Canadian women, not very many pleasant memories from Austria. Now you're looking at the world champions in men's doubles. The defending world champions, they do it again. Tobias Schiegel, Marcus Schiegel of Austria. Yes, they are brothers.
This is really interesting to look at the start. Remember, both the sliders work together. Person on the bottom man, is not there just for the ride. Each one works together, steering the sled going down the course, and it's extremely difficult.
I know when some people watch double luge, they smirk a little bit because it looks a little strange, but it must be very, very difficult to tune in on that sled.
It is really hard. The sled itself weighs about 27 kilos. Now, you have to think that that top man has to maneuver not only the sled, but the athlete, the bottom man behind him as well. It is very hard to steer the sled. And think of it from a perspective from him being on top. What sort of view is he looking at? It almost feels as if he is going to fall off.
Igls and Igls, 119.732. A big cheer from this crowd here at Igls, Austria. Thrilled to see an Austrian team in the top position on the podium here at these World Championships. Unusual finishing banner for this doubles team.
And that's exactly what they are. They're a team. They work together, driving this sled down the course. And look at the unison that they are able to create on the sled. It looks like one.
And there was no indication coming into these World Championships that they were on form. In fact, they had not been on the podium in the previous 4 World Cups. But they are the defending world champions, and they have done it again. Igls and Igls thrilling the Austrian crowd. The gold medal to the Austrians, Kraus and Berndt. The Olympic bronze medalists taking the silver. The Americans and the Italians, medalists at last year's World Championships, off the podium. Well, some consolation for the Austrian fans with that victory, but Marilyn, these World Championships, a showcase for the Germans.
Absolutely, and you consider Georg Hackl, who came off back surgery in October. It's an incredible story. And another incredible story is the depth of the German women's team. And I predict in Nagano, we're going to see a 1-2-3 sweep for the Germans.
Let's look ahead to the Olympics for Team Canada. What can the Canadian team take away from these World Championships?
Well, I think it's a matter of experience. They had the ability here to qualify for the Olympic Games, but they're really going to have to work hard towards Nagano.
All right, thanks very much, Marilyn. We will now continue our coverage of the World Bobsled Championships when we come back. Forward to the floor, the men's 4-bob coming up. Stay with us.
It was about the time that gold was discovered on Bonanza Creek that the Canadian Bank of Commerce set out on one of the great human adventures in Canada's history, the epic trek to the Klondike.
Is it terrible up there? I can't imagine.
They'd been asked to be the government's official bank.
In your letter, when you described the trip over the mountain.
Sure, there was plenty of gold, all right, and plenty of ways to spend it, too. But the men knew they could trust the Canadian Bank of Commerce.
As far as the new bank is concerned, I'm extremely well satisfied with the efforts.
You see, the bank was there on behalf of the Dominion government, and they could see beyond the glitter to a larger dream, a dream called Canada.
Your awaiting wife and
your loving and devoted husband, Wilfred.
When you never forget where you came from, you can see more clearly where you're going. As in the past, CIBC will continue to play a pioneering role by investing in Canada's vision of the future.
Hi, CIBC. How may I help you?
Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Seeing beyond.
The call waiting beep.
Yeah?
It's like a knock on the door.
Who is it?
You know someone's there.
Who is it?
You just don't know who. And that can drive you nuts. Introducing Bell's new visual call waiting. Like a peephole, it works with your Vista 350 phone to let you see who's calling, so you can decide whether to take the call or not. Now you can peep before you answer the beep. New visual call waiting from Bell.
With its sophisticated real-time four-wheel drive, an interior you could quite happily live in, an agile double wishbone suspension. The real news is, where won't you be seeing the new Honda CR-V this year?
Curling at its finest. Former world champions and Scott Tournament winners gather for the toughest competition of their careers. The Scott Tournament of Hearts, live from Vancouver, Sunday, 1:30 Eastern on CBC.
The Swiss Alps and the glamorous resort of St. Moritz is the site of high-powered racing bobsleigh style in this centennial year of the sport. Welcome back to our coverage of the World Bobsleigh Championships, and now it's time to break out the heavy machinery. The four-man bob is coming up, but Clark, a lot of the minds of the Canadian team right now.
Well, certainly the problems have started with Chris Laurie. All year long, he's been juggling crewmen, trying to get that good, cohesive team. And here at the Worlds, Sheridan pulls his groin in training, and he's got to add Steve Wiseman into the grouping. Then with Pierre, he bought a new sled at the beginning of the season, hoping to do better technologically. But what happened was the steering was too different from the two-man. Hans Hiltebrand, the head coach, worked with the steering over the holidays, and hopefully now Pierre can get a chance to get more comfortable with it, and hopefully he can produce a result.
All right, it's time to get down to business. There are 4 runs. Here are the highlights of run number 1. This is the four-man crew of Swiss number 2, Reto Gucci, Daniel Geiger, Beat Seitz, and Guido Acklin. Of course, Gucci and Acklin winning the two-man bob earlier at St. Moritz.
And now the teamwork becomes so important. You've got 3 crewmen on the sled. They've got to get in tightly. Nobody can move now. Heads all nice and low and in line so that airflow carries over the top. See, Guido's got his eyes just over the top of the cowling. Now with the four-man, it's much bigger. It's 630 kilos with the 4 people inside. So that weight plus the speed at the start, you can see it's about a 1/10 of a second difference at the top in the first 50 meters. So it's going to be faster. And the driving, he doesn't have to drive as much. He's got more pressure in the curves now, so a little less driving, but this thing really moves.
And after a race and after a heat, perhaps, they can weigh the sled and the competitors.
Yeah, there's lots of technical things that happen. Of course, at the start, they check the temperature of the runners to make sure there's not a big difference between that and the static runner. And at the bottom, they can choose to weigh them in between runs or at the end of the final race to make sure they're in the proper weight.
102.27 the time for Swiss number 2, piloted by Reto Gucci, already a gold medal winner at the World Championships in St. Moritz. And you can hear how happy the Swiss guys are.
Well, it's important in this race to get the good start right from the beginning, and with this first run, they've certainly set themselves up well. Now it's a challenge to see whether the rest of the field can keep up to them. Here we see at the start, Reto's coming in from an angle, you know, and diving at that bar. But look at the turnover, and when we get the next view from behind, you're going to see the cadence as to whether they can roll it over at the same steps.
1 in. Now the rest.
2, 3 on the bail. He's going to jump in, and the brakeman's already settled, and now they all sit down, and then the push bars, you'll see them all flip in and fold down.
Plus get those arms up before they're snapped against the sides of that track. Now this is Germany 1, legendary. Wolfgang Hoppe is the pilot. René Hahnemann, Sven Rohr, and the brakeman is Karsten Embach. And really, I guess Wolfgang Hoppe, the Jordan or the Gretzky of bobsleigh, really.
Yeah, you can't ask for anything more. You know, he showed up here in 1982 as the 3rd pilot, no chance to break into selection, and yet with a stock sled, he was able to beat the 2 other East German pilots for a position, but they didn't let him race. So he's got a lot of experience on this track, and I mean, ever since then, he's been taking World Championship medals all over.
And reunification hasn't slowed him down at all. He has won more than 30 international medals, way more than anybody else.
No, actually, it gave him a better crew selection. I mean, now he could draw from essentially 2 different countries. Look at their heads all aligned. These are great shots here. You're getting a good chance to see not only the spectators, but just all the different transitions of the curves linking each other. Good crowd there in Horseshoe. You know, it's only about 10 feet away from the actual road that follows up this track. His time's a little less than Gacci's, who we saw come down earlier. He's about 2/10 of a second behind now, while a 10th. Let's look for his speed, though, as he heads down into the final curve.
This is Germany 1, 143.
Boy, you know, it's about 8 kilometers an hour faster than the two-man, so they are really moving.
It's like the Autobahn in Germany. Time of 102.38 for Wolfgang Hoppe and Germany number 1.
Well, you see that number 3 in the sled put his elbows out over the side. I mean, we've seen that happen with other crewmen, and the sled whacks into the side, and they snap their elbow right off. So here at the start, just watch the turn over here of the crewman's legs. You can just see the cadence here, left, right steps, all pushing in unison, ripping up the ice, and then that good, clean load up onto the bail and in, and then settled right away. Great start, good teamwork.
That's great choreography indeed. Now, this is Canada 2. Driven by Chris Laurie, along with Ian Danny, Ricardo Greenwich, and Sheridan Baptiste is the brakeman. Sheridan and Chris, 6th place in the two-man competition here at St. Moritz.
1, 2,
Good turnover. You got lots of track experience on these guys here. Now you see them all getting in one at a time. 5:19. Boy, you know, that kind of start, when you're giving up a tenth of a second to pilots that have just as much experience of you, or certainly in technology, you know, the equipment's pretty standard, that's too much to give up to try and hope to find yourself on the podium.
And as we talked earlier in the two-man competition, Laurie considered one of the top drivers technically in the sport.
Yeah, but in the four-man, you know, there's just so much more happening. Now, Chris wants to, in these transition here, Nash Dixon leading into Horseshoe, it's nice to be in the middle. You want to get into the curve early, so he doesn't want to see himself pushed down at the beginning. Nice transition flow around. You can see the head staying stable. And if you were trying to look for where he's steering, you'd look right down at the ice where the runner tips are and see how much they're moving from side to side. Very little steering he does down here.
The runners move slightly, but the axles are all one piece.
Yeah. Yeah, the rules are very distinct in that area. 142, so he's a kilometer an hour less than Hoppy, and that'll reflect in the speed.
Absolutely, a time of 102.54 for Chris Laurie's Canada 2 sled. Little tap on the head from Ian Danny for Chris Laurie. Born in Windsor, Ontario, now makes his home in Vancouver. When you're building a four-man crew, what are you looking for? I guess choreography and chemistry.
Well, in the four-man, you want to get the stature pretty much the same. I mean, Chris being a little lighter, what he's gone to is speed. They're good size in these guys. They're 90 kilos across the board. You know, that's pretty good. They definitely want to be a little bit heavier so that they can take away from some of the weight that's in the sled. We saw Sheridan have to take a second skip on the start, so I'm not sure what that indicates.
Now this is the Canada 1 sled, driven by Pierre Lueders with the twin brothers, Matt and Ben Hindle. And the brakeman is, of course, Dave McEachern.
Well, let's hope that they can get off on a good start. Matt's had some injury trouble all year long. It's sort of been nagging the team, but boy, collectively, these guys look good on paper. A little bit of problem there at the start. They're just holding out at the end. You got to get in quickly. You can't stay on the bales.
The start covers about 50 meters, and their start was pretty good in terms of time.
Yep, there's the block, and 6 meters out from the block is the initial start light, and then 50 meters further on is what they give as the starting time.
And I assume everybody has to be in the sled by that point.
You'd certainly want them to be, you know, and that's one of the rules, too. Certainly, if everybody doesn't get in the sled, you got to finish with all 4 people to have a time, otherwise you're disqualified. And we've seen over the years some pretty horrendous starts with people slipping and sliding, pilots stumbling and falling and taking out one of the crewmen. So there's been lots of theatrics going on. Tough bang there for Pierre. You know, in this lower part, he just wants to make the transitions on and off the curves nice and smooth. Doesn't want those hard bangs. He wants the direction nice and straight.
16/100ths behind the best time so far. Down the course here at beautiful Moritz, Switzerland. 142 kilometers an hour is his speed as Pierre Lueders crosses the line. 102.52 his final time, about a quarter of a second off the best time so far for Canada 1. They were 13th in the four-man at the 96 World Championships. I guess there might have to be an adjustment, Clark, for Pierre Lueders, who's so successful in the two-man, to move to the four-man as a driver.
Well, he's had some difficulty with this sled. It's a Dresden-built sled, whereas two-man is built by our head coach, Hans Hiltebrand, and steering's been a little different, so they've been working on it. And I'm not sure how much is the actual steering or Pierre's headspace, but they're definitely coming together on it. Here we see, look at them hanging out. You see Matt Hindle, I believe it's Matt anyways, one of the twins hanging out on the side. You know, you've got to step on the bale and right into the sled. Here we're going to watch a rough exit. You know, Pierre comes down too direct, steers it into that counter wall. He wants to come out a little sooner, so he's middle of the track and then gets a nice entrance.
The standings after the first run of the four-man here at the World Bobsleigh Championship. Switzerland is 1-2. That'll make the folks at Moritz happy. The Canadians, well, Pierre Lueders in striking distance. Chris Laurie and his crew well back in 9th place. We've got much more to come. 3 more runs indeed, so grab a seat. More coverage from Moritz right after this. Stay with us.
Some long-distance companies promise you savings of anywhere from 25 to 50% off Bell's regular rates. Some promise they'll guarantee your savings. And some will even promise free calling just to get you to sign up. All of which raises a question. If all these long-distance promises are so great, then why are more than 5,000 people a week switching back to Bell? Just asking. Welcome to the new Bell.
Today on Busybodies, it doesn't have to be lonely at the top, and the struggle to ski again. Busybodies, TV that's good for you, tonight.
If you're like most students, you've chosen the most feeble weapon indeed, because a resume is about as powerful a job-finding tool as a blade.
Andy Nolman on getting your first job next week.
The pain was unbelievable.
A questionable mastectomy.
They know that a serious mistake was made and they just left her.
Then reconstruction almost killed her.
I'll fight it with my last breath.
The Fifth Estate, Tuesday at 8.
Shockwaves. Eaton stalls off bankruptcy, and hundreds of companies around it are pulled into the turmoil.
We're now sitting on the edge of our seat, wondering whether or not we're going to have a customer tomorrow.
Sunday night on Venture, right after Sunday Report.
War-Amp's key tags are a symbol of our work for child amputees. Through the CHAMP program, children receive the artificial limbs they need to lead active lives. As they grow up, the War-Amps will be there, providing information, guidance, and so much more. The War-Amps. Amputees helping amputees. Thanks to your support of the key tag service, lost key return, now by courier.
A nice crowd has gathered on a very nice day in St. Moritz, the birthplace of the bobsleigh, taking in these world championships. And this is Canada 2 in run number 2, Chris Lorry's sled, and he's had to do a little personnel change.
Well, the injury to Sheridan that happened in training progressed too far in the first run, so now he's had to insert Steve Wiseman, move Ian Danny to brakes. I mean, you got all this adjustment right in the heat of the race. It's tough to do. It's tough to get the start that you were hoping to. 5:05 is the fastest start we've seen so far, so let's see where they come in comparison to that. 1700's off. Boy, it's hard to make up that time now, but you know, Chris has just got to settle in and focus and drive this course the way he knows how.
And 1700s doesn't sound like a lot, but in this sport, it's like a mile.
Well, now you can see, you know, now it's 3300s. He's off of the fastest start, and it just starts to accumulate as you go down. St. Moritz being such a long course at over 1,500 meters, you know, you can make some mistakes, but when you make them, you want to make them further down the course than up at the top. Chris all year has been hoping to have his crew healthy, and just, you know, this is just an indicator it's just not going his way this year.
Still losing time.
Yeah, watch the heads moving around. You know, everybody's got to stay nice and tight and settled, and, you know, they've really got to put a good run here.
And even further back, it just must be difficult to find some kind of synchronization when you've thrown a crew together at the last second.
Well, yeah, and you know, this is a sled he's hoping for. He picked it up from Sergio Serpaias. He's really pleased with it. He's got good runners. It's that, you know, just that last element that's got to go in there to make him, put him up on the podium.
2:05.34, the total time for Chris Lorry in Canada 2 after 2 runs. These four-man bobs will do 4 runs altogether here in St. Moritz.
I tell you, look at Ian jump on the brakes there. You know, he comes around, they go over a bridge, which the Cresta run runs underneath. He can touch him a bit. Then they got Portaggio, which is an old Argentinian race car driver. And then he's really got to jump on them, boy. And it's hard on a brakeman.
The Cresta Run, Clark mentions, that's almost the roots of bobsleigh here in St. Moritz. Tourists used to come over and take the Cresta Run down the mountain. I believe they still do that.
Yeah, they got one curve there called Shuttlecock, and boy, you missed that one and you're into the hay bales.
All right, this is the Canada 1 sled now, driven by Pierre Luters. Run number 2 for them.
Now, we talked about the injuries to Chris's crew. Matt's had some difficulty too, and here he's, you know, that timing has just got to just work with these guys. 1/10 of a second off. Now, they had come here with the hopes of being in the top 3 or 4 sleds in the start, so they're still in that grouping, but, you know, we used to see these guys at the top of the ladder and setting the standard by which everybody else challenged themselves. And we talk about injuries to the Canadian program. We don't have a big base for athletes to draw in. Guys got jobs and they're doing other activities, so it's hard to keep a good core group together. It's going to be one of the important things leading into next year, that the athletes are all healthy. There's a good base to choose from, because come the Olympics, you want to just pick these guys and drop them in, and, you know, they'll work on their cohesiveness, but they got to be healthy.
The health of the bobsleigh program, Clark, would be helped a lot by an Olympic medal perhaps next year. And, of course, in the 4-man, Vic Emery won a gold medal in the Olympics back in Innsbruck in '64.
Yeah, so we got some good history there, and you know, we were hoping for good things. I mean, Pierre can do this, and so can Chris as well. They just got to be healthy and focused.
102.63 the time for the second run for Canada 1. Pierre Lueders, Matt and Ben Hindle out of Calgary, and Pierre's longtime brakeman, Dave McEachern. And Lueders and McEachern were fourth in the two-man competition earlier at St. Moritz. So Pierre Lueders knows that he can achieve good results at Worlds and Olympic Games. Just putting it all together is the key.
Well, here we see them at the start. Now, we're going to watch the load again. They've got good power, good pressure. You can see there's not a lot of movement going on, a little bit of head bobbing. But once they load, they put their foot on the bale, they've got to immediately load in. You can't hang out in the side. Your body's up like that. It's like putting your hand out the window of a car, you know, when it's driving fast. All that force against it.
Now, from Switzerland, this is Swiss number 3, Christian Reich, Steve Anderhoob, Roger Graber, and the brakeman is Thomas Henshin. If they can bottle that kind of intensity, they can make a lot of money, though. Sound of those athletes as they get into that sled, just amazing.
Yeah, and you can hear the cowbells on the side. There's a lot of support here. You know, and that brings up another point. The Canadian program runs very lean. We've got Jeff Hugo, Hans Hildebrand that work with this team the entire year. That's 2 support staff. I mean, we have a mechanic back home, and we drop in Darren Stainsby, the physio, at certain times. But otherwise, there's just 2 people supporting this team. You look at the other programs, there's as many as 8 guys out there supporting with an on-hill mechanic, the physio staff, the guys that are moving the sleds and helping prepare the runners. It's a very tight program the Canadian program runs. And of course, the Swiss on their home track, I mean, not only got the support, but they got the club people here. I mean, they get out at the bottom of the sled. I remember in '82 at the Worlds, Ralph Piekler comes down, gets out of the sled. You know, all of a sudden somebody's picking up the sled. They got a limo waiting there to drive them up. I mean, it was a good program.
A limo, not bad.
Yeah, and we were waiting in the cold too because they took their time sending down our warm-ups.
Here comes Swiss 3, not in the limo, but they're charging. And look at that time, 102.20. A very impressive time for Christian Reich, the pilot, who is a relative unknown on World Cup. But like the German women in Luge, the men in Switzerland, a great deal of depth. A lot of celebrations in the finish area. Great run by this Swiss team. And hear those cowbells.
Now here we see it at the start again. You know, look, he dives off that corner, so he's got that angle, but already the sled's got some momentum, so he's able to hit it even harder. Good turnover. You can see their heels kicking up high, the snow coming out, but watch, onto the bale and right in. Onto the bale and in, and then the brakeman right in at the end.
How about some more Swiss? This is Swiss number 2, Reto Gucci, Daniel Geiger, Guido Acklin, and Beat Seitz manning the brakes. 5:05 the start time, and it matches it. Nice start for Swiss number 2.
Well, if there's anything you can do in the off-season, it's work on your physical training. Oh, a little problem up there at top, you know, in that straightaway at the top, because you can't steer in the straightaways. There's no pressure. So any movement by the crewman or the pilot getting his hands on the ropes to the steering sends the sled sideways, and that's where you don't want to be bumping the wall. But one of the things I was talking about, Tom, is when you get into the off-season, the only thing you can work on is the physical aspect of the sport and your equipment. So you want to be working on your speed and your strength and really peaking for the Worlds.
Just 4/100ths behind, the quickest time so far. This is Swiss 2, driven by Reto Gucci, the world champion in 2-man. There is a brakeman, but he only does one thing, apply the brakes when things are over. Otherwise, it's pedal to the metal, 142 kilometers an hour. A good run by Swiss 2, a time of 102.28, an aggregate of 204.55 after 2 runs, halfway through here in St. Moritz. And again, the bells ring. The Swiss in command on their home course here in St. Moritz. And this big crowd just lapping it up.
See the crewmen rise up and then drop down into their position so that they're pushing through the bar and not down it. Then they're staying, keeping their heads down. You know, they might want to bring their heads up just a little bit and get their hips underneath it, but a good, quick, clean load, nice and settled. See the push bars fold in now.
We are halfway through the four-man competition. 2 runs gone, 2 to go. The Swiss sleds, 3, 2, and 1 are 1, 2, and 3. But in striking distance from Germany, Wolfgang Hoppe in Germany 1. The Canadian crews just trying to stay now in the top 10. Don't go away. We've got a lot more to come, though. Continuing our coverage of the World Bobsleigh Championships from St. Moritz, Switzerland, right after this break.
The choice between a sedan and a wagon used to be quite simple. You'd choose the sedan if you wanted style, the wagon if you wanted more room. That is, until Mercury came up with the stylish Sable wagon and the roomy Sable sedan. So, to make the choice a little easier for you, we gave them both the same affordable price. Problem solved.
Imagine yourself in a Mercury.
We had a deal, buddy, and you screwed it.
You made a mistake, that's all.
Get inside!
Something screws up here. Somebody could get killed.
You just tell us what you want.
Is Mommy hurt?
Guard that window! Trade my wife for me. I ought to blow you in half.
What's my dad trying to do in there?
Go!
That loser's got a gun pointed at your wife.
Back off! You finally got it right. She's my wife.
No, don't, buddy. Please don't. Please don't.
Black Harbor, Wednesday.
If you're like most students, you've chosen the most feeble weapon indeed, because a resume is about as powerful a job-finding tool as a doily.
Andy Nolman on Getting Your First Job, next week. Mezzo-soprano Catherine Robin, pianist Michael McMahon, and violist Douglas McNabney take us to Vienna Thursday night at Pollock Hall, a recital of songs by Schubert and Brahms.
Ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for the Swiss, who are 1, 2, and 3 after 2 runs, halfway through these World Bobsleigh Championships in the four-man competition. This is the 3rd run now for Wolfgang Hoppe and Germany 1. Hear them yelling hop, 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 hop. It's German for go, 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 go.
Well, look at the start. You know, he had a 5:16, only 2 1/2 off the fastest start for this heat. You know, you can just expect the best things from Wolfgang Hoppe. Good, consistent runs. He's not shattered at all. The pressure doesn't get to him. He's got a good crew. Just great things happen when he's on the course.
Last season, in fact, a consistent crew indeed. They medaled in every single four-man competition on World Cup.
Yeah, you know, here's a guy, 38 years old. I mean, talk about it. Well, there have been some other pilots older, but not as consistently strong. And he stepped onto the World Cup circuit and was winning right away. And that's actually what we see out of Pierre. You know, Pierre's first World Cup race, a victory. So he's in the same category. He's just got put in the years.
The German sled moving well, 17 100ths ahead at this point.
Well, let's watch their speed. That'll be a good indicator where it's coming up. Boy, consistent every run, 143 kilometers an hour.
And he is ahead. Half a second faster in this 3rd heat. 3:07:09, the total time for Wolfgang Hoppe of Germany. It's interesting that even since reunification that the German team is still very strong in both luge and bobsleigh.
Yeah, real power horses. You know, they brought good pilots from both East and West, and they've got now a good mix. They're very solid. Look at the cadence, you know, left, right. I mean, it's not very often you get them all lined up in the same thing, but good, quick, clean load. Great turnover by the brakeman.
Great precision by the Germans. Now, Swiss 2, Rito Gucci and crew, their 3rd run. And you'll hear the crowd cheer them on.
Look at this, you know, you saw them standing on the blocks. Guido Ackland's a good foot taller than Gacci.
Fast start time.
Wow. Well, Gotchi's definitely stepped into a program. There was a bit of a void created there when you saw Ralph Piekler, drop out, and Hildebrand had dropped out, who's now become our coach. And, Gustav Vader came in and started to take control, but there was no good second pilot. And now with Vader dropping out, Gotchi made a good run for it in '94 when there was the two of them. And now he's really stepped up to the plate, and he's good in the two-man and the four.
And ahead, 7/100ths. These Swiss sleds are just rocketing down this course.
Yeah, you see them through their dike and the Nameless, and now into Tree, Shamrock, Leap, Sachs. I mean, they're really hauling through these corners.
Final turn, 143 kilometers an hour, the same kind of speed we've been seeing. A little bang at the end, but great time, 102.38 for Reto Gucci's Swiss 2 crew. The best time we've seen in heat number 3 out of 4. The Swiss look almost professional in their uniforms and in their sled and in the way they approach the competition.
Well, they're very focused. I mean, they're on the home court, so they've got that advantage. Look at the drive that you see, the good high knees, the unison. Although they're different stature-wise, you can definitely see the teamwork, the synergy that's here.
Into the horseshoe.
The head's lined up, a little bit of bobbing there. You can see Guido's got his head right up on the tight on the inside. He might want to back off just a little bit.
Now the American four-man crew. This is USA 1. Brian Scheimer, Chip Minton, Randy Jones, and Robert Olesen manning the brakes. Scheimer has medaled in four-man at previous World Championships.
Well, he's done well in years previous, but the injuries have always plagued him, whether it's his groin or his hamstring or his Achilles and that sort of stuff. Here they've got a team together that works. A 5:08 start. This is a great start. The other thing they've been able to do is clean up their program. Politically, there's not that many fights, and of course, within the team, there's not. They went into the '94 games, great expectations. All of a sudden, lawsuits were flying around about you've got my equipment and runners, and it just takes them all their focus away. Here you've got an experienced crew, great experience in Brian Scheimer. He rode on Matt Roy's sled, and the second U.S. pilot, Jim Herberich, was also a crewman on that sled in '88. They've stayed in the program, they've got experience, they've got the equipment, they're focused, got the start, and their pilot coach is a Latvian, a former driver from the Latvian program, and Janis Skratens, and he's doing great things with these guys on the ice.
USA 1 having a good run, although they're starting to lose some time now at the bottom of this course. Coming into the final stretch now, USA 1. Brian Scheimer takes her across the finish line. 102.62 the time. A total time of 307.49 for 3 runs for USA 1. Brian Scheimer, 34 years old, was the World Cup four-man season champion back in 1993. And these are probably among the least known American Olympic athletes, the bobsledders.
Yeah, there certainly hasn't been a lot of focus on them, but leading into next year, you can bet the profiles will go up. Here you see Brian, knees moving out, but there's good positioning there. And now you're going to see them start to load in their sled. They've got to really kick in quickly. This is just a good team that's put together here.
Those push bars are moved in. Now, Canada 1, Pierre Lueders, the Hindle brothers, and Dave McEachern. This is run number 3 for them.
Well, we talked about the disappointment with the injuries and that, and they're going to start to fall off in the start here. Yeah, there it shows, 1800s. I mean, a few years ago, these guys were the best in the world by almost a 1/10 of a second. Now, mind you, Pierre has changed. The Hindles used to ride with Chris, and Jack Pick's not running this year, so there's been some changes there. But now you can start to see it reflected in the time as we go down the course. Without that fast start and the inexperience that Pierre has on this particular course, he starts to drop away from the top of the field. And these guys waving things in front of their faces, that doesn't help either, so there's...
Even that can distract a pilot?
Well, certainly if he's bothered by the start, if he knows that there's been some jamming or jarring at the start, he's going to start to take his focus away. I'd say Pierre's got more experience in that, but times it can bother people. Now here we see these brown, the burlap along the side. Those curtains are there to prevent the sun from getting directly on the course so it can stay fresh and it doesn't melt down.
Not a very good run for Pierre Lueders in Canada 1. 1.11 back, a total time of 3:08.04 for this Canadian sled. And Pierre, who is a very, very competitive man, will not be pleased with that effort. But I guess matching chemistry is so difficult.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things I just noticed is you got McEachran on the side now, so you don't have that power position that he had in the two-man. And you got Matt and Ben pushing from the other position. Ben Hindle is a good brakeman. You got Matt holding out there just a little bit, so they're juggling their positions a bit.
Now Canada's second sled, driven by Chris Laurie, along with Steve Wiseman now. Ricardo Greenwich and Ian Danny manning the brake for Sheridan Baptiste, who got hurt after the first run.
Well, it's certainly a tough chore for Steve Wiseman to be dropped in here, you know, expected to go 100% with a crew he hasn't worked with, but he's doing a fairly good job. When you see him within, you know, 1/1600ths, a tenth of the rest of the crews, that's a good thing to have for this such a young crew.
We mentioned earlier that Sheridan Baptiste has a track background, a 200-meter man. Well, so is Ricardo Greenwich, who's new to the team. He's the '94 national champion in the 200 meters.
Well, this type of training should help him in his track background. You know, he gets a little more size and explosiveness from bobsleigh, and if he can transfer that over onto the track season, it'll be a big benefit. And of course, then coming out of the track season, he can bring that speed back into bobsleigh. It'll work perfect. But he doesn't have the experience that Sheridan has, and that really hurts. You know, all season long he's been plagued with small mistakes, stepping on the brakes, you know, pulling the brakes too soon, those type of things, and that really hurts in the team aspect.
Well, at the World Track and Field Championships in Athens next summer, look for Sheridan Baptiste and Ricardo Greenwich on the Canadian team, perhaps in the 200. The time for Canada 2, 103.14, but they're 1.5 seconds well back in this heat number 3 in the four-man competition at the World Bobsleigh Championships here in St. Moritz, Switzerland.
We're going to see at the start, Steve's on the left side of the screen. You can see him, good turnover. He's got good position. His head's solid. He's looking down the course, tips his head a little bit to look for the bail, and that, of course, blocks you a bit, but not a bad load here. You just see a little bit of juggling going on. They've got to be nice and settled. Here you see Chris coming into horseshoe. He's a little bit late. He wants to be more to the right-hand side, but he gets his line and comes around. And watch the heads of the crewmen as he exit here. Pretty direct exit, and their heads swing hard from left to right.
Which is not what he wants. After 3 runs in this four-man competition, the Swiss lie 1 and 2. Wolfgang Hoppe of Germany now in bronze medal position after 3 runs. The Swiss in 4th place as well. The Canadians well back. Lueders in 9th, Laurie in 12th. Well, St. Moritz may be for skiers, but today it's for sledders. We'll continue our coverage of the World Championships right after this break. Stay tuned.
Monday morning on Daybreak, David Gutnick will tell us how music is being used to help autistic children. And it's also Musical Monday. You could win tickets to exciting musical events. Monday, Daybreak, between 6 and 9.
Tomorrow on Sunday night, Montreal's Queen of African Music, Laureen Claassen.
Woo, bring back memories.
Tomorrow.
Moritz key tags are a symbol of our work for child amputees. Through the CHAMP program, children receive the artificial limbs they need to lead active lives. As they grow up, the War Amps will be there, providing information, guidance, and so much more. The War Amps. Amputees helping amputees. Thanks to your support of the key tag service, lost key return now by courier.
With its sophisticated real-time four-wheel drive, an interior you could quite happily live in, an agile double wishbone suspension. The real news is, where won't you be seeing the new Honda CR-V this year?
I'm
Jan Arden, host of the 1997 Juno Awards. The statuette was actually molded after my profile. Next year they're adding a little tiny double chin.
Jan, that's a Gemini Award. This is a Juno Award.
Oh.
And I'm Albert Schultz, and I'm going to be the host of the Gemini Awards on March 2nd.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
This was modeled after my profile. You see?
Kind of flat. Are you going to be singing at the Gemini Awards this year? I know that you are a song and dance man.
Speaking of flat?
Well, no, not necessarily.
Nagano, Japan, site of the '98 Winter Olympics, welcomes the best women downhillers in the world for a World Cup race on the Olympic course. Coming up later on CBC.
The beautiful Swiss Alps near St. Moritz, Switzerland. Four-man Bob was an original member of the Olympic family back in 1924 in Chamonix, France. This is the fourth and final run for Pierre Lueders and Canada 1.
Well, they've really got to knuckle down here. They haven't had the starts they wanted. They're certainly not in the position they want to be finish-wise. So wow, lots of juggling there. 5:24, we're starting to see those faster sleds be in the low 5, 5:05, 5:08. So they're giving up time at the start. But now Pierre's got to just focus. He knows he doesn't have the great start, so he's just got to stay tuned in.
For Pierre Lueders now, really the effort is to stay in the top 10 here at these World Championships. A medal is out of the question.
Well, and of course he's getting used to this sled. We talked about the difficulties he's had in driving it throughout the season. So now he's just trying to get comfortable with it and start to improve his driving. There's still lots of races left in the World Cup circuit. So he's got to come out of here and really jump into the rest of the series.
Entering the final few turns now is Pierre Lueders in Canada 1, along with Madam Ben Hindle and Dave McEachern, his longtime brakeman in the two-man. They were fourth in the two-man competition here at St. Moritz, but won't nearly be that good here in the four-man. 4:10.95, the total time for 4 runs for Pierre Lueders. A tap on the head, but as you can see, let's not be bothered. He's a pretty upset driver, very competitive man.
No celebration for him. He really expected bigger things. Well, here we see him at the start. You got the 2 power on the side. Ben Hindle on the brakes is very strong turnover, and Matt's trying to match him. Being twins, they've got the same sort of running style. But things start to happen here. You got Pierre loading in. Dave's going to step onto the bail and come in behind him. There's a bit of a lag there, and Matt's already waiting on the brakes while Ben's sitting down. So you've got to have that all coordinated and nice and clean.
Now, the Swiss number 1 of Marcel Rohner, Marcus Nussli, Thomas Schreiber, and brakeman Roland Tanner. They were silver medalists at the World Championships last year in the four-man. And these guys are very, very strong. All 3 Swiss sleds at these World Championships, just very, very impressive.
Well, they put the package together. We go back and talk about support structure. That's definitely there. They're focused. They've had good training time leading into the Worlds. They've been well prepared. They've got the equipment, and definitely they know what they're doing out here.
And much like we feel about hockey in Canada, the Swiss take a certain pride of ownership in this sport. The sport was born in Switzerland. The first club in the world was formed in St. Moritz, Switzerland, so there's a sense that this is their sport.
Certainly, and they've got people positioned all over the course, different level coaches, that are able to get the information back up to them between runs on areas that they saw they could improve or sleds that they've seen do a little different so they can try these things. We don't have those coaches, and many of the teams don't have the series of support that they do.
The infrastructure is there, and good time again. The Swiss sled, this is Swiss number 1. The leading time in this 4th and final heat at the World Championships in the four-man as we enter the final turn at 143 kilometers an hour, pulling a few G's, I expect. Best time we've seen, 102.15 for Swiss number 1. This crew was 4th after 3 runs, but they have moved up into striking position for a medal. A great run by Marcel Rohner, Marcus Nussli, Thomas Schreiber, and brakeman Roland Tanner. Once again, the cowbells ring here at St. Moritz.
Here we see the sled coming out of Shamrock. He dives into the curve. He pulled it out much too abrupt, and he was too high. And then he's going to come around Devil's Dyke, and he's going to be laid into it. Can't make those mistakes.
Yet still had a pretty good run and a pretty good time. Now from Germany, Germany number 1, Wolfgang Hoppe, the former East German star, now the unified German star. Let's see what he can do.
Well, he's got that belt on. I'm sure that's for support, keeping his back muscles nice and warm as opposed to keeping his stomach muscles nice and tight. Well, he's almost a tenth behind at the start, so he's got to make that time up if he hopes to get back into a medal position here. All the time we see now is going to be reflected on the previous run, which was a great run we saw by Rona, so he's got to measure himself up to that.
Very close, but behind.
Makes the transitions up here. Nash Dixon, that was a team that was together in '64 and won the gold medal in those Olympics. There was a British team. Round Horseshoe. Some great names they have for these curves and a lot of history to it.
Check out his next interval time. Nope, still behind. Wolfgang Hoppe in Germany won, entering the final sequence of turns here.
Well, this will be a disappointment if he doesn't hold on to a medal position.
He made up some time. Second place, 102.29 for Wolfgang Hoppe of Germany. He's used to being on the podium at just about every event he enters. But the Swiss are still to come.
Yeah, with 2 sleds left, there's a good chance they could go 1, 2, 3. Boy, just real power there at the start. You can see them hit those bars. You know, they're really pushing. They're trying to bend them. Turnover. Now watch Hoppe get in. Boy, just cat-like movements.
Good comparison after watching the Canadian crew kind of struggle to load their crew into that sled. Very smoothly done by the Germans. Talking about smooth, the Swiss have been very smooth. And this is Christian Reich, who has come out of nowhere with a dazzling couple of runs and is in medal contention for the Swiss. Their 4th and final run at these Worlds.
They've been in the mid-5 teens here, so if he can get a good start, 5:14, so it's a good competitive start he's had. One of the things that we're looking at here, too, though, is the Swiss program was allowed to race 3 sleds in the Worlds because they were winning in the World Cup circuit. And we saw the same thing in the 2-man with Huber surpassing Pierre Luders in that last World Cup. That allowed the Italians to race 3 sleds. So it's a big benefit to be doing well in the World Cup.
It's one thing to have 3 sleds. It's another thing to have all 3 sleds in medal contention, which the Swiss have here at these World Championships. Cheered on by a big crowd in St. Moritz in the thousands. And they're ahead, but it's real close.
Well, you just want to look at their heads here. Nice, smooth transition, straight. You don't want to see them banging against the side at all. And then look for that speed.
This is Switzerland number 3. Piloted by Christian Reich. The final turn, 144 kilometers an hour. Wow. And look at that time, 102.12. Just a blistering ride by the Swiss crew led by Christian Reich. And these guys are kind of out of nowhere. Reich is not the number 3 pilot in Switzerland even. But another terrific run. And they're loving every minute of it.
And great speed. I mean, we're seeing the 4th run. They've run 2 heats yesterday, 2 today, and yet they're getting faster times. These are the fastest times we've seen posted all race long. So the track's definitely holding up.
You want to save your best for last, and the Swiss crowd has seen that from Christian Reich in Swiss 3. Now, Reto Gucci and his Swiss 2 sled. He's got a chance to win a 2nd world title, having already claimed the 2-man here in St. Moritz. And can the Swiss go 1, 2, 3? Here we go. Looks like somebody split his pants.
Yeah, I can say Danielle certainly did. You can see that what happens is when Beat gets in, he puts his foot forward too soon, hooks onto their start suits, you know, and these training suits here, all they are is nylon, so when you hook your spikes into that and you go to plant your foot hard on your pedal, you just tear them apart.
But right now, Reto Gucci's sled has posted the best times and still ahead.
Well, they had a great start, so now it's just all coming together. He's just got to link the curves nice, no banging, everybody stay tight, he stays focused. But as long as we're seeing negative numbers on that, we're going to see the guy who's going to win here. You know, -13, so he's really pulling ahead. Still number one. Now, a good indicator is that speed. We saw 144 kilometers an hour. We'll see if he can top that.
Will he lose any at the bottom? No, 144 again. Here he comes, Reto Gucci of Switzerland. 18 100ths ahead, 102.01, but his time of 408.94.
Boy, that's just incredible. To go 1, 2, 3 is something, especially at a World Championships.
Never been done before. In the history of bobsleigh, look at that. 1, 2, 3. Switzerland dominates at the World Bobsleigh Championships. Gucci wins, completing the sweep in the 2 and the 4. Hoppy, the great German, is in 4th place. Pierre Luters, though, finishing in the top 10. Chris Laurie and his crew back in 12th place. We'll be back to wrap things up from St. Moritz on a day the Swiss are cherishing right after this.
The pain was unbelievable.
A questionable mastectomy.
They know that a serious mistake was made and they just left her.
Then reconstruction almost killed her.
I'll fight it with my last breath.
The Fifth Estate, Tuesday at 8.
It's not always very clear to the purchaser just what it is they're buying.
Original prints, signed reproductions. There is a difference.
Everybody knows when they get a reproduction print, they're getting a reproduction print.
Marketplace, Tuesday at 7:30.
I can't go to the photocopier without being molested.
Come on, let me rock you.
I'm just a piece of meat.
Loosen up, friend. Give me a hug.
This hour is 22 minutes, Monday on CBC.
Our World, week to week. Comprehensive news, the top stories, thorough coverage, correspondent reports, discussion. Wendy Mesley, host of Sunday Report at 10.
Bringing the story home.
It's a way of life, it's the loss of a way of life.
What is the future of our fishing industry?
There was plenty of everything for 500 years. And through mismanagement, a lot of that stuff is gone.
The National, television to call our own.
The TV's doing a film about Ben Wick's life.
I've always tried to, whatever I've done in life, give people what they want.
Ben Wicks? The cartoonist?
Yes, that's right. On Life and Times, Wednesday at 8.
What's he ever done?
Back at St. Moritz, the 1997 World Bobsleigh Championships are in the books, but their books, Pierre Luters and Dave McEachern, will probably let gather dust.
Well, unfortunately, for myself, I wasn't very happy with the result in St. Moritz. We had a few injuries, and we ended up having very poor starts, and with half-decent driving, we still weren't in the top, and that's very disappointing.
The good thing is it's a position that we're familiar with. That we've done it before, leading into the '94 Olympics, where we were the fastest starting team in the world, and often I think we won 4 or 5 medals that year as well. So it's a position that Pierre and I are very familiar with and quite comfortable with, and that's what winning is all about. Just it becomes familiar and comfortable, and takes a lot of the pressure away from you, and it makes your job a lot easier.
I thought it was very important. We've been in the past twice second overall in the World Championships. The last 2 years, and unfortunately this year we sort of fell back a little bit, 4th in the 2-man and then 10th in the 4-man. Really wasn't the way we wanted to prepare your last World Championships before the Olympics, but I think for us it was maybe better not to do as well as we'd hoped, because maybe then sometimes you think it's a little bit too easy. So that'll keep us a little bit honest for the summer, and maybe we'll have to work a little bit harder in terms of the start and the preparation.
All around, it was just a good experience. I mean, 4th in the world isn't bad, and I'm quite proud of it. I'm proud of that we were the fastest started team in the world, and proud to be Canadian as usual.
What was first-rate domination by the Swiss became a first-class controversy. All 3 Swiss sleds were disqualified pending an investigation into the axles on their sleds. Upon close examination, officials discovered the front axles on all 3 broke the international rules. Instead of 1 piece of metal, they were in sections disguised as 1. So an unprecedented Swiss sweep was swept away, and their places on the podium were taken by Germany 1, Germany 2, and the United States of America. Not the way the folks in St. Moritz wanted to conclude this 100th anniversary year of bobsleigh in that lovely alpine town, a controversy involving the home team, top 3 sleds disqualified. What are the implications for the sport when it happens at this level?
Well, certainly by the results. It was an unlevel playing field. But, you know, the FIBT, which is the international controlling body, puts rules in place, technical rules, so that every sled is standardized to a large degree. And they certainly breached that, and you saw by the result. I mean, there were pilots, radio strong, but, you know, the other pilots weren't that good to surpass this field. But we've got World Cups to finish out the season. Next year there's the World Cup circuit again, you know, and the Olympics, and the athletes are going to move beyond this very quickly.
All right, let's look at the Canadian team's performance in the 2-man and the 4-man in St. Moritz.
Well, very pleased with Pierre. He wasn't that strong in training, put a lot of pressure on himself. Top 4, that's great. As for Chris Laurie, incredible. This is his best result yet, and he really worked well with Sheridan in that. In the 4-man, we just got to clean up the injuries. You know, Pierre's going to get a little more consistent with his 4-man driving, which he's really come on to now, and then we'll get beyond that and prove some good results in the future.
All right, Clark, thanks very much. We'll look forward to next season. Coming up tonight on Molson Hockey Night in Canada, doubleheader action. Game 1 has the San Jose Sharks at the Gardens to take on the Leafs. The nightcap pits East against West as the Canadians meet the Oilers in Edmonton. And I'll see you tomorrow night as the PPG Kart World Series begins with the Grand Prix of Miami.